Hello internet, my name's Lave, and this week I watched a big one. I watched Batman Begins. So before I start, I just want to say thank you to Alex Bennett for the request. I'm sorry it's taken so long. It's something that I've wanted to review for ages. I was just waiting for a good time to do it. And with DC's current slate of films dividing critics and fans alike, I thought what better time to look back at a time when they got it right. And boy, did they get it right. And I also wanted to do it to prove that I'm not a DC hater. I want all of their films to be good. And if it is good, I will sing its praises all day long. So without further ado, here are my top 4 reasons why I love Batman Begins.
Number 1.
DC and Warner Brothers hired Christopher Nolan to direct. I can see the comments now. I'm not going to get DC hater anymore. I'm going to get Nolan fanboy. Well, yeah, particularly at that time. Have you seen Memento? So I've grown up with every live action iteration of Batman. I used to love running into my mum and dad's bedroom on weekends when I was a kid to watch the 60s campy Batman TV show on their little screen. I loved it. But even at a young age, I do remember thinking, this is kind of cheesy. But then I remember my mind being absolutely blown when I went to the cinema. I can't remember what film it was, but the trailer before it was Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. Oh my God. That final scene was forever seared into my brain. I will never forget the first time I saw that criminal going, "What are you?" "I'm Batman." Ever since then, I was hooked, and of course, off the back of that, you got a really cool animated series. We then got Batman Returns, which I think went a bit too Tim Burton. It then went on to Batman Forever, which I kind of remember liking, but then when I saw that at the time, I was 13 and stupid. And then, of course, they absolutely killed the franchise with Batman and Robin. What the point is, Warner Brothers had ruined their franchise and they needed to do something really smart to bring it back. And what did they do? They hired a really smart director in Christopher Nolan. Someone who would take the thing seriously, and boy did he take it seriously. I just loved his entire approach to the whole thing, always saying, what if this happened in the real world? He grounded it in reality and gave it a sense of realism that I loved. And on top of that, we got one of my favourite DPs in Wally Pfister to capture this realistic world that he was building. Not only that, he also got Hans Zimmer on board to compose the score, along with James Newton Howard. I love this score. It's kind of melancholy when it needs to be, it's stirring when it needs to be, it's scary when it needs to be. It's brilliant. But before these talents could combine, they had to get something else right. They had to get a good story which honoured the source material and didn't disrespect the characters, which brings me on to
Number 2.
They tell a character-driven story which explores the psyche of Bruce Wayne and explains his motivations and makes us understand why he becomes the Batman. So I recently reviewed The Legend of Tarzan, which I believe was heavily influenced by this film in terms of its editing and the way it's constructed, i.e. the use of flashbacks. The difference is, for me, Tarzan's flashbacks were very brief, and although they do honour his origin story, they don't really develop any character, and ultimately it's just there for a plot point. Whereas in this film, the entire first act is dedicated to these flashbacks, and they used to really give the character of Bruce Wayne depth. You really see him transition from a fearful boy, fear being a real theme in this film, and transitions into this angry, directionless man. It also introduces us to some key characters and some key relationships in the Batman mythos, which brings me on nicely to
Number 3.
pitch perfect casting. First of all, Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne and Batman, for me, the perfect choice. You only have to look at American Psycho and The Machinist to see that he can play unhinged characters really well. And when he commits to a role, he commits to a role. This was him 6 months before Batman Begins in The Machinist, which I also highly recommend. It's a great psychological thriller. Yeah, he goes method big time. What I really like about Christian Bale's performance is that when you really sit back and think about it, his alter ego or his persona is actually Bruce Wayne. As I say, in the first act you see him as a boy and this fear turns into anger, and that's who he is. He is Batman all the time. And that is summed up in one of the last scenes when Rachel, played by Katie Holmes, who I actually thought was okay in this film, I think she got a bit of a rough ride, she realises that he is Batman and she goes to him and she says,
"No, this is your mask. Your real face is the one that criminals now fear."
You really get a sense that the rage and the mission that he embarks on and the persona that he creates to cover it all up, Bruce Wayne, really sullies his life and puts a strain on him and ruins his family name. But that's the sacrifice he's got to make, because he's Batman. But it's all good because he does have a moral compass in the form of Alfred Pennyworth, his butler, played perfectly by Michael Caine, who injects a bit of welcome humour but never out of place humour. It's perfect. You look very fashionable, apart from all the mud. What is the point of all those push-ups if you can't even lift a bloody log? They're backed up by Lucius Fox, who's played brilliantly by Morgan Freeman. He's a Wayne Tech employee who was a tech genius, but he's been demoted to kind of a warehouse administrator. But he sorts out Bruce Wayne with all of the tech. I love the tech in this film. Apparently it's all based on actual military technology, but it's so believable and logical and cool. Love the tech in this film. So let's talk about the villains. Now, spoilers ahead if you haven't seen the film, as if. Stop watching it now because I'm going to talk about Liam Neeson's character. So he plays Ducard, who works for this organisation called the League of Shadows, who are working for this character called Ra's al Ghul, the head of the demon. So he finds Bruce Wayne, who's wandering the planet aimlessly, trying to figure out why criminals are like they are, and he becomes his mentor and trains him to become a ninja. Yeah, Batman's a ninja, and is sort of a surrogate father to him, which makes it even more interesting when it's revealed that Ducard is actually Ra's al Ghul. Seriously, Liam Neeson was the perfect choice to play this character. It's so nice to see a fleshed out baddie, and is actually a reflection of what Bruce could be if he makes certain decisions. And I really like the fact that this character shouldn't really work in this film, considering that it's based on realism and is trying to be authentic, when in the comics Ra's al Ghul is a kind of immortal character who uses the Lazarus pit to regenerate. So of course they've had to change it up to make it work in this film, and they do it really well. So Ken Wantanabe plays a decoy version of Ra's al Ghul, and they honour the character in just a couple of sentences when Liam Neeson's character says,
"But is Ra's al Ghul immortal? Are his methods supernatural?"
Yes. And then of course you've got Cillian Murphy playing Dr. Jonathan Crane, aka the Scarecrow, one of Batman's earliest villains. I really like the way that Murphy depicts him in this film. There's just something off about this guy. He's really creepy. And it is great that they managed to incorporate his mask. I love the simplicity of his design, and I really loved the visual representation of when he uses his fear toxin. I thought that was spot on. As I say, this film has an underlying theme of fear, so incorporating Scarecrow into that just makes complete sense. The only disappointment is that you don't see much of him, but that's okay because you get even more great performances from other supporting cast. Rutger Hauer plays a CEO at Wayne Tech. Tom Wilkinson is surprisingly good as Falcone, the crime lord of Gotham. And I haven't even mentioned that Gary Oldman plays Sergeant Gordon, which brings me on to
Number 4.
It tells the story of Jim Gordon too. In all of the other films, he's a side character and he's always floating around in the back. But in this, he's got a really chunky part. This film should have been called Batman and Jim Begins. That's got a good ring to it. I love the fact that Gary Oldman's performance totally captures the spirit of the Jim Gordon from Batman Year One. The moral dilemma that he's in, being a good cop in a corrupt city, working with corrupt cops. It's just brilliant. In fact, most of my favourite scenes from this film involve Batman and Gordon, from his very first introduction in the first act to the scene in his office when Bruce Wayne is sort of a proto-Batman. He hasn't got his full suit yet, but he's testing him out to see if he can work with him, to the scene when Bruce Wayne has finally become the Batman and taken on Falcone's gang and left Falcone strung up on the light, which gives Gordon the idea of the signal. And then you've got the final rooftop scene. Oh my god, the first time I saw that, I got goosebumps all over me, a shiver down my back. The bit when Gordon hands him the card and he flips it over and it's the Joker card, I just got goosebumps again. Oh, talk about ending the film on a high note. I was ecstatic, and oh my god, I cannot wait for the next one. In fact, I think I stood up and did the Ken Wantanabe clap.
Impressive.
In the interest of doing a balanced review, of course this film isn't perfect. Objectively speaking, there are some bits that annoy me. The fight scenes aren't the greatest, they're not captured very well. The framing's always very close to the action with some very rapid editing. It does get really confusing, and Nolan's response to that was that he wanted to make you feel like you're seeing it from the villain's perspective. I'm not sure that I buy that, because in the very first fight scene before he's even become Batman, it's exactly the same. You just can't tell who's who. Yeah, not buying it. And the scene's not helped that they're all covered in mud. And there is one scene which makes you go, what? And that's the scene when Katie Holmes' character Rachel's trying to cross the bridge and she runs into a police officer and stops her and she says,
I'm a Gotham City District Attorney, let me pass.
bullshit. I'm going to try that next time I go anywhere. I'm a district attorney, let me pass. Yeah, sure, go in. I'm being really super picky. Overall, I absolutely love this film, and they raised the bar so high I just couldn't see how they were going to better it with the sequel. They were probably going to do something crazy like cast Heath Ledger as the Joker. So that's my thoughts on Batman Begins, and pause the video now if you want to take a closer look at my enjoyment tracker. I absolutely loved this film. It was the perfect start and the Batman that we needed at that time. Yeah, good luck Ben Affleck with the solo Batman film, that's all I can say. So thanks very much for watching my review of Batman Begins. I really do appreciate it, and if you can, please give that video a like. It really does help me out and it lets me know that I'm doing the right thing. And if you know someone who likes films and likes talking about films, please feel free to share the lave. I swear I will really appreciate it.
Swear to me!
Subscribe